Hello, hello, hello. We have a video here from Sandman. He just released it a little more than 2 hours ago. So I'm gonna give you my unadulterated take on this fresh, new, juicy piece of content. Sandman has been recently sticking to memes and meme of the week videos because they're easy to produce. But he's actually gone back to some actual original content. He's making some. He's doing an investigation into this particular subreddit, and he's doing more of his philosophical kind of theory-based videos, which I like. I think that's good. So let's get right into it. Oh yeah, just by the way, I'm gonna make a formal, probably scripted video to want to think before he sleeps. Latest videos, because I don't want to make just this lazy, reactionary, kind of on the fly, off the cuff content. It's very easy to produce, but at the same time, it's quite lazy. And I want to try every little type of content. So that'll be coming out soon. Stay tuned for that. And let's get into it.
Hi everyone, Sandman here. This video is
I have to edit that out. Three, two, one, go.
Hi everyone, Sandman here. This video is brought to you by a donation from John, and he didn't give me a topic. So I wanted to cover a post on the men's rights subreddit called Why Men Must Never Open Up to Women. Here's a short version of what it says, and I quote: Women in our society tend to have huge social support networks and wide societal acceptance, indeed positive encouragement for displays of vulnerability and pain. Men do not. We don't get support or affection from friends and coworkers, and displays of vulnerability often end our professional and social lives. Men in this society are valued for.
Okay, well, I mean, if men were truly vulnerable, there's a huge difference between the way that men emote versus the way that women emote. Like when a woman gets physically violent, for example, nothing happens. Nobody takes her seriously, right? They're like, oh, it's cute. She's throwing a little tantrum. But if a man gets physically violent, he's going to jail, right? So just on that alone, the fact that men, when we get pushed emotionally, our tendency is to do something physical because that's really in our biology, is to start doing things physically. Whereas women, they throw tantrums and they do verbal abuse. Statistically, in abusive situationships and relationships, they tend to be a lot more verbally abusive and kind of use subversive tactics to abuse, and they emote a lot more verbally and emotionally, I guess, whereas men tend to be more physical. So there's this kind of there's a problem here where it's like, oh, if a man were to truly emote, he would be in jail, right? Because the male emotion response is to be physical, and that's outlawed in society. Whereas if a woman does it, no one really cares. But also, that's not really their impulse. Their impulse is to be emotional and be verbally abusive and play little trickster games. So it's a completely different playing field. Men have it way harder because society has been set up to pretty much outlaw and clamp down on the violence of men, but it has not for women.
Capability, reliability, and durability. Anything that threatens male productivity or could render them a liability rather than an asset in any given situation makes them widely considered to be worthless. But guys get told they're not being intimate enough if they don't open up, so they have to carefully craft a second mask over the top of the first.
This is actually so true. This is so true. I'm so glad that he brought this up. This whole, like, it is true. Like, you can't just be um you need to be alpha all the time and be stoic and da da da. It's actually not true. You have to play both sides of the field. You have to be alpha and beta. You have to be able to be stoic, but also express emotion. You can't just be an emotionally pent up, emotionally numb, inert substance. You have to actually master both. And it's actually true. What he's saying is when you be emotional, it has to be selective, meaning you have to be careful in how you express your emotion. And this, you say, oh, that sounds really complicated. You're like, how am I going to manipulate my emoting? It's actually fairly easy. I'll give you a little analogy. So I knew a guy at work. He had anger issues. He smoked a bunch of crack. pretty sure he had bipolar. He was like crying or yelling or screaming or doing whatever half the time. Yeah, we were working in a kitchen, and you can't just lose your shit on the line in the middle of the kitchen, right? So he had this strategy where whenever he got emotionally over the edge, he would go into the freezer of the kitchen, go in the freezer, close the big metal door behind him, and scream, right? So no one could hear him. And yeah, it was very awkward having to deal with that. But it's smart. Why is it smart? Because it's a controlled way to release emotion in a scenario where you're not going to get in trouble. It's predictable. So once the coworkers know, like me and the other coworkers, are like, oh, he needs to go let it out. So we're not freaked out when he does that because it's controlled. So and if you get in the habit of this, it can be probably, I think it's a smart way to deal with like severe emotions because a lot of people have kind of uncontrollable emotions. I've never been that type of guy. I've always had very good emotional control. But apparently, a lot of people seem to struggle with emotional regulation and control. So I would highly recommend that strategy because it worked really well. The guy was very emotional, but he was able to deal with it in an effective way. And you need to do the same thing with relationships because you can't just be a pent up, I'm alpha, old frame all the time. You need to find selectively parse out safe ways to emote and express yourself and be vulnerable so that basically the feelings detective has something to chew on because women are very much like feelings detectives. They look for vulnerability and they're looking for emotions and they're looking for something. They need that. Psychologically, they need your vulnerability because they need security that they have some kind of emotional leverage over you. If they feel he's totally stoic, I don't know what's going on in his head, they get paranoid, they get crazy, and some like it, but there is a part of female human nature where they want you to be emotionally attached to them so that you're vulnerable, so they're not threatened by you, so they're not worried about you potentially leaving or doing something to them. And you gotta understand it's very critical to women's survival because obviously men are much bigger than them. There's that physical threat of violence, so women really need every little thing they can get their hands on to swing the power dynamics in their favor. And they've been evolutionarily programmed to look for these vulnerabilities in the male psyche through emotion, and that gives them a sense of security. When you're the reason women want you to be vulnerable is because they need leverage over you to feel safe. That's the short and simple answer because you're physically stronger than them. So the only alternative for them to actually feel safe around someone who's big and strong is if they feel they have an emotional grasp on you. So that makes them feel very safe. So I would recommend instead of being Mr. Stoic Alpha Male all the time, find ways where you can safely express your emotion. You will learn what's okay and what's not. Like, so you can't cry, obviously, right? You can't go and have a full-on meltdown and start crying and doing all this crazy shit. But maybe like being a bit goofy, say something silly, say something goofy, express ideas that you wouldn't share with anybody else, say jokes that you wouldn't say, like edgy jokes you wouldn't say with anybody else. That's a normal one, right? You want to give them something to chew on, basically, something safe that isn't going to get you killed, that isn't going to actually, let them blackmail you or do something crazy to you, but it's going to be something that something for them to chew on because they need it. And this is very much true. I've never heard anyone actually talk about this. All I hear are the Andrew Tate types being like, oh, you need to be a stoic, perfect alpha male all the time. And they don't talk about the other part of relationships, which is, yeah, you kind of have to have both elements. You have to have the alpha and the beta. You have to be able to be strong and weak. Strong for the world, weak for her. And he kind of paints it, Sandman's painting it as a very manipulative thing. I guess it is. It's as manipulative as you make it, in the sense that if you want to be manipulative with it, you can, or you can just understand that there are certain boundaries you can and can't cross. There's a middle ground that you have to reach with your emotional vulnerability. Too far to the right, and you're crying, and she thinks of you as a wimp and a wussy. She's going to leave you. Too far to the left, and you're too stoic, and she doesn't know what to do with you. Oh, he's emotionally unavailable, XYZ, right? So it's about finding middle ground where you can express emotions and be safe. and but also, communicate to her that she's special to you in some way, and that, here, have this little piece of my heart or whatever.
One, simulating just a tiny bit of emotional leakage, but not enough to threaten their perceived usefulness. Men dare not let anything real slip out of them. For one thing, they'd get no opportunity to practice a controlled release at any point in their lives. And for a second, the sheer quantity of
I don't really like this framing. I'm not gonna lie, Sandman. This whole like, oh, men aren't allowed to share anything real. What do you got hiding in the closet that you would consider real? Now, this isn't really like a pointed attack on Sandman, but it is kind of. I'm not trying to say it to be mean. I'm just like, why do men feel this need to emotionally vomit on women? It is kind of weird. Maybe it's just my personality type. But this whole like, oh, I'm boo-hoo, I'm not allowed to emotionally vomit on women. This whole like, I have to hold it in all the time. I can't tell her that I'm secretly bisexual, and I'm on the verge of crying every single day. You know what I mean? It's like, what the fuck are you hiding? Like, fuck's sake. It shouldn't be hard to be a man. You know what I mean?
trash they're holding back will destroy the entire dam if they poke a little hole in it. So they're left in the extremely stressful and burdensome position of having to perform fake vulnerability for their benefit, while keeping the lid screwed down even harder on the real thing. Unquote. The rest is mostly word vomit, so I didn't include it. Yes, women want you to open up emotionally so they can use your thoughts and feelings later on against you in an argument. But if you go too far, then they'll get disgusted. They want to know how you feel, but they don't want you to show how you feel. Your emotional liability is seen as a woman's emotional asset.
Yeah, yeah. So, um, I don't know. It's just kind of a pessimistic framing Sandman's giving to it. I guess it is if you're naive. But healthy power dynamic exchange is healthy and good for any relationship. There needs to be a healthy power balance for any meaningful relationship. The covenant and sacrament of marriage, matrimony, is a good example of this. I mean, there's a healthy exchange of power. The man's resources and commitment for the woman's virginity and her sexual access, right? That's an integral. So you say, oh, that's materialistic. You're just exchanging, sex for money. Kind of, I guess, if you really boil it down and remove all the nuance from it. Yeah, I guess you're right. But there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with a healthy exchange. It's what you want, in fact. And people who are naive will look at the world and they'll see, oh, it's just an exchange. Isn't that cruel? It's like it's all barter and exchange, and it's all cold and calculated, and it's only as cold as and calculated as you make it. You're the one getting pessimistic about it. People like Sandman and these MGTOW types. Female nature isn't inherently evil. It's not something that needs to be lamented per se. You have to understand that women physically are much weaker than men, and they are very vulnerable to men, and they're really just developing their counter strategy to counteract the male physical dominance, which like historically completely destroys all female attempts at subversion. It's only recently, with the modern society that we have, that females have really had the upper hand on men in terms of power dynamics in relationships. And that's a fault of society. That's a fault of men not being allowed to have authority over women and authority over children. And the way our society is set up, that's not really a fault of female nature in of itself. You say, oh, the worst parts of female nature are being exacerbated. Sure, I'll give you that. Because society has done a very good job clamping down on the worst parts about men. That's what it's mostly been focused on for the past millennia, right? We're just so I don't like this. I'm not a big fan of the pessimistic approach where it's like, oh, women are innately evil because they use things to manipulate against you. It's a necessary, healthy power dynamic and power exchange, because you want a balance. You want a balance between male power of the physical superiority and the threat of male aggression versus the female subversion and emotional manipulative tactics, right? So they're two contrasting forces, right? And if there's a healthy balance between the two, then they kind of cancel each other out. in the sense that the best way to avoid the worst elements of the opposite sex is to bring power from yourself, so that it cancels their out, or it creates balance. It's kind of like Russia and America having nukes. Like, if Russia only had one nuke, then America would just bomb the shit out of Russia. I mean, maybe they wouldn't, right? Obviously, but I'm just saying, there'd be warfare, but there'd be more tension between Russia and America if they were not equally yoked and equipped in terms of the military. It's only because we have roughly similar militaries, that there's peace, right? So you can only have peace by strength, and you can only have a successful relationship by both parties having an equivalent, balanced amount of their gendered strengths and dominance tactics in a relationship. It's a very naive worldview that, oh, I just want to remove and completely eliminate and lament the worst elements of female nature because it's bad. No, the solution is learn to manage them. Bring Now, I'm not going to really ascribe prescriptions, because the problem is we live in a society that is inherently biased against men. So there is no real solution. I mean, I could talk about my ideal ought society, which, some people would say, oh, 1950s, other people say 1350s. But that's kind of a different discussion, right? So I guess to help Sandman, I would try to reframe the situation as really it's just a necessary and probably healthy, or else we wouldn't have evolved it, evolutionary strategy that women use to try to protect themselves from men. It's a healthy balance and exchange of power to create a mutually assured destruction, kind of like neutrality principle situation between men and women in relationships. And it's not innately evil, right? I would point your hate at the construction of society, the current laws that govern the West, and the degeneracy and the feminization of Western law. So that's what I would say to Sandman.
You expressing that liability is you using her as an emotional tampon. But it's your job as a man to be the tampon for her and not the other way around. We men are the plow horses of humanity, and if we get in the habit of complaining instead of doing, then women in the elites don't get what they want. So we're told to suck it up, buttercup, and be a man. If we don't at least pretend to open up with a facade of vulnerability by sharing even some fake feelings, then the women we're involved with start to feel as though we aren't emotionally invested in the relationship.
I don't understand this either. This like, oh, suck it up, Buttercup. You got to be a man. This isn't something to get salty about or something to lament. Oh no, I have to be stoic. I'm a man. It should be kind of natural, right? Or at least the attitude towards it should be, this is a good thing. Me being stoic and me being emotionally shored up is a good thing. It's not like something I have to do that's a big pain in the ass. I can't whine and complain about XYZ. You shouldn't want to whine and complain. You should do that for yourself. You should do that out of integrity and out of self-respect. Not because women need you to. It just comes off very, beta and very, like, angry. I'm not allowed to whine and complain about my chicken nuggies being cold because I have to be stoic in front of this woman. Meh. Meh, meh, meh. Sulk in the corner. It's like, you should want to be stoic. You should want to have your emotions stirred up. You shouldn't want to complain at all. It's very disgusting. Like, you should feel disgust at yourself, not because women are there. Women are just really there reflecting who you are. And I think a lot of these men, sorry, I think a lot of these men have never really worked on themselves, or never really thought about investing in themselves as people until a woman is there to judge them and critique them. But it should be something that you're doing pretty much since childbirth. You have your family with expectations for you. This is another thing, is like, expectations are good. Oh, my parents have such high expectations for me. Expectations are good. Unironically, they're good because the world has expectations, and the parents need to reflect the expectations of the world so that your child can succeed. And women have expectations, and that's good because children need to be looked after. Holy shit! I know it's so this whole attitude of like lamenting the male role and the female dynamic is I don't gravitate towards it. But I hope I'm not coming off as too aggressive towards Sandman. I do respect and like Sandman. Uh, so I hope if he ever did see this, which I doubt he will, but let's say he did in theory, I hope he doesn't take offense. I'm being a bit harsh because I'm trying to refine your content, sir. But there's no ill will towards it.
And therefore in love with them. Then they don't feel safe and secure and start to look elsewhere. But there are times when it is fine for a man to show his emotions, and that's when we're intoxicated. It's kind of like the Romans and their saying in vino veritas, which means drinking wine tells the truth. Most of us men are so angry inside, and when drunk, I'm angry, and so are many guys. Why do you think that when the English get drunk, they become hooligans and get into street brawls? The same goes for Toronto. On the weekends, the cops are out in full force in the Club District to control intoxicated male truthful emotions. Drinking finally reveals that most men are pissed off about their lot in life and have no outlet for expressing it. It's only when our inhibitions are gone thanks due to alcohol that we finally express our true selves. It's like people who become rich and suddenly treat everyone horribly. They only do that because being poor inhibited their true selves. They aren't being a jerk.
Actually, so true. Yeah, both W. Sandman 2 points. First point is the true male emotional expression is anger and violence, and women don't understand this. Society doesn't expect this. Doesn't understand this. Oh, men need to express their emotions more. True male emotion is rage, physical violence, rage. Look at history, right? Look at religion. Look at look at incels, right? Look at any moment of history or any current event which catches your eye as being led by male emotion. It's violence, right? School shootings, riots, peaceful protests, right? Angry political campaigns, shootings, lootings, murder, brawls, right? That's the male emotional expression, and women don't understand this. Society doesn't understand this. It says, "Oh, be expressive." I think Andrew Tate said this already, so we probably got it from somewhere else. But yeah, this is something people don't understand. Is yeah, you don't want men to be emotional. Definitely not. Definitely not. And then the second point, Sandman, what was he saying? I can't remember.
It's like people who become rich and suddenly treat everyone horribly.
Oh.
They only
Yeah, this is so true. The only I hate this. I hate this too. I hate being nice to people out in public where I hate them, and I'm not allowed to express my true emotions because I am in a particular compromising scenario. Like, for example, they're my boss, or they're at they're my professor, or they're my whatever, right? We've all had that, but it does suck, and it kind of proves that people definitely would not be as nice and as kind as they are if they were not forced into it. And I think a lot of kindness and congeniality out in public is mostly cope. I think most of it's cope. I think if most people could give the finger and flip other people off, we respect those people. We go, yeah, look at him, stick it to the man. He's brave. He's expressing his emotions. He doesn't give a fuck, right? That's how we see those people who, the bad boy, right? Like, we revere that because I think we relate to it in many ways. Most of us just don't have the bravery or we have things that we would lose, right? So we don't want to do that. And yeah, so W. Sandman.
only do that because being poor inhibited their true selves. They aren't being a jerk because the money made them jerks. They've always been that, now they're just subconsciously not caring about expressing it anymore. Even if consciously they don't even know what they're doing anymore. I'll discuss more in a moment. A controlled and socially acceptable way of men releasing their frustrations. Look what happens when you try and ban that like they did in the 1920s. You get the mafia showing up. Prohibition might have been an attempt by women to force men to open up to them emotionally, instead of releasing their emotions in a bar in front of total strangers or their friends without women being there to exploit the display of emotions. So men just shifted gears and started getting involved in organized crime and ending each other in the 1920s as a way to get.
I mean, really, is he really gonna try to reframe history and crime in the 1920s as a product of women? It does remind me of the feminist approach of just inserting gender conflict into every historical narrative, saying, "Oh yeah, men were oppressing women. You see this here when men did this thing. Oh, it was only because they were oppressing the female scientists. Yeah, that's why they stole all the women's work. Like they just insert this like gendered oppressive narrative that they just postulate to be in the background of every major historical event with no grounding for it. So yeah, I have to fault Sandman for that. I mean, it's kind of a stretch to assert that, somehow collective female subversion played a large part in the 1920s. I mean, please link me some evidence. I'd love to see that.
Their aggressions out. Alcohol is a release valve for men, allowing us to be fully inhibited on the weekends.
Yeah, this is generally okay. Oh, sorry. This is generally my perspective. Is that there's kind of this fixation going on recently with gender because by the transgender community, by the red pill, by conservatives, by leftists. All groups are kind of honing in on gender right now. But I think only recently has it been a point of contention. I think ever since the first wave feminism, I don't think it's really been a huge historical factor until then. I think most women just kind of did their role in the background, and you weren't elevated as some godlike figure just because you were a man. You weren't given special privileges just because you were a man. If anything, it was the opposite, right? But I don't think it was particularly poignant, or I don't think gender was the most important dynamic going on in history. I think that's kind of a modern construction, this fixation on gender, and everyone seems to struggle with it. Red pill and the trans LGBTQ alphabet LGHD TV community alike.
And then go back to the work week after we've purged most of our emotions out of our system. Even if a man opens up while drunk, people don't shame the man or make fun of him because he's vulnerable or violent. In that Tombstone mystery link I shared, Doc Holliday says all kinds of insulting things. And you see Kurt Russell quickly diffuse the situation by saying he's drunk, as if being drunk means it doesn't matter. People saw the real him but are pretending that they didn't. Then Doc says in Vino Veritas, or once again wine brings out the truth, re-escalating the situation. Bars and liquor stores profit from that emotional release, as do video game companies. Women destroying male video games, Star Wars, and other male pop culture are poking an angry bear by trying to wreck all of our distractions. They want male attention at any cost, but they don't understand how awful it's going to be getting men's frustration thrown in their face. What men are truly capable of doing if they don't have a release valve for their emotions. I suspect that more men would become violent towards women, and that would scare them. But do women secretly want to feel that fear because the men they fear they respect? Just look at all the women in the West that are too scared to say that they were raped by Muslim men, so they say that white men did it instead. Look at how many of them have grape fantasies. A lack of alcohol in Islam could also be the reason why men from that culture are more likely to express how they truly feel and do so with violence on occasion.
I never thought about that. That's actually a good. That's actually a good argument for Islam. They don't require the crutch, the emotional crutch of alcohol. Although they have other crutches, like fucking hookahs and whatever. So I won't give them too much credit. But yeah, they don't drink. I don't really know the point he's trying to make. He's trying to create some kind of link between alcohol and women. Basically, his argument is that, men can't express themselves around women, therefore they drink so that they can finally express themselves. I wouldn't say that. I would say the rampant. I'd probably put it more like American Psycho, where it's like the reason people do cocaine and drink, and it's because of society as a whole. And we're not built for this type of society we live in. It's innately absurd to our biological framing. We don't know how to contextualize the world we live in, right? Because your brain, and this is something I want to impart upon people so that they can understand how the human brain works, which is that humans need to contextually build a narrative around the things that they do. And we have a limited amount of narratives and references that we can actually use to narratively construe the events around us. So people try to then mesh our experiences into one of these narratives. For example, did you know? Did you know that in higher stress situations, when a person is undergoing consistent high pressure or stress, they're more likely to have sex, or they're more likely to want to have sex. Their libido increases. And if you think about this from an evolutionary standpoint, this makes sense, because if you were under a high pressure scenario, say your village is under attack by some animals, or a warring tribe, or some the weather isn't doing too great, or you don't have enough food, so you're stressed, then there's the pressure to get your genes out now, because fear, pressure, stress are all very closely tied to death. And if you're close to death, you need to pass your genes on now. So there's that pressure. And this also ties into why decadent societies don't reproduce, and why the fertility rate is collapsing massively right now. Is because we're too comfortable. We don't feel the need to pass on our genes, and a healthy amount of stress, fear, and pressure can actually induce libido increase. And it's because of that evolutionary narrative, is what I'm trying to get at. Is there is a narrative, a reference of, oh, death, therefore reproduce to avoid death, because death is imminent. I need to reproduce now. So what humans do in our current society is we're undergoing a lot of stress from work. We're poor. That's why poor people tend to have more offspring as well. So you're seeing these evolutionary narratives start with something like, oh, a group of wolves attack village. A bunch of people die. I'm next. Pass off genes to survive offspring, right? And then that narrative gets translated into a modern society where it's like, oh, my job is shit. I make no money. Let's have 6 kids, right? Or, I'm sure there's other ways I could tie that in, but these narratives carry over into the modern society. And the way that you, as a human, can understand and contextualize events in your life and things around you are through these evolutionary narratives. So you can only really understand things that go on around you through these different different narratives, right? And the problem with the current society that we live in is it's so foreign. The idea of 9 to 5 or 996 culture, or whatever it is. Kind of the long work week, rigid schedules, getting up in the middle of the night, staying up late, the crazy food we eat, all the concrete and steel everywhere, the lack of nature, the lack of time for introspection, the crazy amount of dopamine, the screens. It's so foreign to our evolution that we don't know how to contextually frame it. We have no meaningful way to translate our current society into a more simplistic evolutionary narrative. And then that's fucking with us, and that's what's causing us to drink. It's insanity. It's a primal kind of subconscious insanity that's pervading the culture, and that's what causes us to drink. But anyway, all of that was just to counter Sandman's argument that, oh, somehow women being a plague on men are causing them to drink. No, I think the insanity of our current society and its innate absurdity is causing people to drink, not women.
Because the release valve of alcohol has been outlawed by Islam. If you create an ideology or religion, it's smart to tell the members that they can't use alcohol. or other illicit substances to blow off steam. So instead, they have to blow their enemies away. That male emotional energy is then channeled towards destructive ends and expansion. In the West, at least, we channel the destructive male energy into drinking on the weekends. I've also said before that if you want to know how a woman feels about you, get her drunk. If she can't help herself and jumps your bones without provocation, or tells you about how much she supposedly loves you, then you know the wine is going to make her tell the truth. A lot of guys wonder, well, if that's the case, then why do women get drunk, sleep with guys, and then find.
This is generally true. Well, there's two ways to put this. You can either A, date someone who doesn't drink, which is probably the better option, or if they do drink, find out what they're like when they're drunk. Because it is important to know. I think it is an important thing for every person to understand what their partner is like under intoxicated substances. Now, if they never do substances, like I rarely do any. I don't smoke. I don't do any. I don't do any hard drugs. I don't do weed. I don't do cigarettes. None of that shit. Uh, I have a drink, right? I'll have a drink once in a while. Um, but if your woman is the same, she drinks once in a while. Maybe she smokes a little bit. I'd say it's important to see what they're like under the surface. I think it is a good insight. Some people have a lot of kind of baggage that they're shoving deep under the surface that you wouldn't notice, but it all comes out when they're drunk, right? So someone might look normal. You might go, oh, they're very normal. They look fine. They're chill. They're relaxed. And then you see them drunk and they're like a raging, crying, shriveling mess, and you're like, okay, I did not know who I was dealing with. And I think it's important. I think there needs to be a lot of weight on that type of person. A lot of people will say, "Oh no, that's not the real me. That doesn't count." Da 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 da. That was me under the influence. That wasn't the real me. Da da. I would say no. It's the opposite. That's the real you. That's you without the literal inhibition, because that's what alcohol does, right? It's an inhibitor. It's an inhibitor, right? So it's actually probably more reflective of the real you. And people like to play it off as, "Oh, I'm just being drunk. I'm just whatever." I'd say no, that's probably more accurate to what you're really like deep inside. And it's a bubbling to the surface of a subconscious phenomena. And you can't really hand wave it, because this subconscious bubbling that happens during drunk is reflecting something that is subconscious, which will permeate your life, even if you're not drunk. So this subconscious thing that's bubbling to the surface, whether it bubbles to the surface or not, it's still there, and it will permeate their life and their psychology, whether they're drunk or not. So it's important to get it out in the open so you can know what it is. And I'm not saying if someone cries once while they're drunk, you need to dump them, or if they get angry once, but it's important to know, because there's some very crazy people out there, some very not okay mentally people, and you're looking for someone who exhibits a sensible amount of emotional release when they're drunk, right? Someone who can let loose, but not start breaking shit and cursing out everyone, and getting drunk and falling flat on the floor, passing out, and some crazy shit. You generally don't want that, I think. I'm probably speaking to the wrong people, because I feel like probably most of you do that. It's just been kind of normalized. And you wonder why all your relationships are failing. You wonder why all your marriages are failing. So I'm the crazy person, but anyway.
File a false allegation later. It's because they want to be with them, which is the truth, but they just don't like the social consequences of their behavior while intoxicated, by everyone finding out about it. A woman's inhibitions can be a man's enemy, especially as she sobers up. She might like you, but if her social circle doesn't like you, but then she also doesn't like you when she's sober. Make sure she wants to hop in bed with you when she's sober, and not just when she's drunk. As for opening up to women emotionally, or anyone for that matter, don't cry in front of anyone. Everyone is disgusted by that. It would be the equivalent grossed out feeling that I would get.
Yeah, but to counter that, I would say you shouldn't want to cry in front of anyone. If you want to cry in front of someone, you probably go get therapy, right? Go figure that out. Like, you should feel a bit ashamed, not because women are shaming you, but because you should care about yourself, and you should be like, what the fuck am I doing? You should hold yourself to a higher standard. You shouldn't want to cry in front of women. That shouldn't be a thing that you feel the need and urge to do, that you have to repress. That would be my counter.
At when I see two guys making out. That's one of the reasons I stopped watching season 4 of The Boys with.
Well, he is right. He is right. You shouldn't want it should be like watching two boys make out. It is. You don't want that. You know what I mean? It's not like, oh, I have to resist the urge of making out with my friend because I have to resist the urge of kissing my guy friend because, women are watching and they'll judge me. Oh well. Oh. You should be innately grossed out by that yourself. It's funny.
Frenchie. I know it's just acting, but it's still gross. But opening yourself up to a woman is not only opening up to her, it means opening up to all of her friends and female family members. They'll all know your deepest, darkest secrets and concerns. Not only can your girlfriend use your emotions against you, but so can they. If they tell their male partners, then the smart guys will lose.
Yeah, this is okay. Let me impart some more knowledge with you while I'm here. I know this video is getting a little long, but it's important. Which is, let's go back to narratives, because narratives are important. People interpret things through stories. Empiricism is a lie. Objectivism is a lie. It's all a lie. People understand things through narratives. That's why the ancient religions were that of stories. Ancient science was that of stories. It was that of parables. Language started out as stories. All this moose came and then I stabbed him and he fought me and cut me, but then I got his antlers and killed him. And that's how language evolved, right? And that's how stories and legends and myths, which then evolved into religion, formed through stories, because stories are important. But what's the modern application of this? It's that when you're trying to create an image of yourself, for example, you're trying to date a girl, what you got to do is you got to realize that you are presenting a story of a person, and you need to be aware of what your story and how you're going to present that story is going to be. Because everyone has stories. You can have bad parts to a story, the same way that a story can have a main character fall and stumble, and maybe he fails the first fight, but then he comes back and wins, kind of like Rocky, right? So you can have negative drawbacks to a story. But you need to be conscious of the story that you're telling, because if you do not tell a story, then they will create a story around you, and it probably won't be the one that you want. And people generally are pretty good at guessing. So if you just try to cover everything up, and you're like, oh, I'm just gonna hide and I'm gonna be mysterious and autistic, that's not how you want to do it at all. At all. You want to create a good narrative around yourself as a person. You want to have a story that you stick to and that you promote. And it doesn't have to be a lie, but it's this framing that you want to do. It's like packaging yourself, kind of. You want to package yourself nicely, so that when she tells her family about you, and she tells the extended family about you, there's something to take away from that. That's good, and then they can translate that story onto the extended family, and people know who you are, and you're not like some weird, mysterious, autistic creep, right? So you want to generate. That's a really good technique, I think, for building your social skills as a person, is generating a narrative around who you are. That's really important. It builds your confidence, it builds your identity, and it helps people contextualize you. Because if you're just a mysterious autist, most people don't know what to do with you. They're like, who the fuck is this? And then they like imagine someone's meeting you and they have to tell their parents about you, right? Because if you're dating a girl, she's going to have to tell her parents about you. And you should really be calculating and thinking 3 steps ahead of like, okay, what is she going to tell her parents about me? What is she going to say? And then I need to manipulate how I present myself so that she says something good. Oh, he's a hardworking guy, he's honest, he's a thinker, he's a this, he's a that, he's into this. So, and I said, yeah, manipulate. I don't think manipulate's an inherently evil word. I mean, we manipulate things all the time. right? I'm manipulating my mouse, right? I'm manipulating my cursor, right? So it's not inherently a negative word for things to be contrived. Um, but yeah, it's an important technique. So it's like a little social skill tidbit right there for you.
Respect for you because you made your feelings known instead of playing them close to your chest. You revealed that you don't understand female nature to them. The last thing I want to bring up in this video is something I heard Andrew Tate recently say on a video, and it proved that he's finally going his own way. For him, marriage is out of the question, and a bad deal. But he does have children, except he doesn't live with the mothers of said kids. He lives with his brother and his close male friends. So basically, he's going his own way, and he's smart enough to realize that both marriage and
It's not really going your own way though, because he has kids, right? They sue him for child support, right? So I mean, it's not really going your own way because you're having kids, you're paying child support, you're fucking women. The only thing is no marriage. I don't know if that counts as going your own way. I wouldn't celebrate that.
habitation are a bad deal. He also said that women are like agents of the Matrix ready to co-opt for it, that they put pressure on a man to do the things that go against his own best interests. He says that when you live with the woman, she will slowly wear you down emotionally until eventually you become a shadow of them.
This I would agree with, which is you don't want to spend too much time around women. They do make you soft. They are leeches. And I don't say that in a negative, pessimistic way. Honestly, I just mean this. It is their nature, right? They will make you soft. They will slow you down. They will make you care about things that are effeminate and gay, and you need to don't spend too much time around women. Treasure the time that you do spend around women, make it count, and then spend the rest of the time busy doing something else. Right. So this is true.
The man that you were. And then she'll get what she wants, which is also what the system wants from you. So once and for all, he fits the definition of a man going his own way. But I don't think he would say that because of all the negative connotations associated with it. More importantly, he's promoting that way of living to millions of young guys.
I was just realizing for this image, right? All you would have to do is just have this guy hold his hands up in front of his jacket and then have an editor. Like, I think that's what they did. That'd be easier than actually painting a picture of the guy to fit with scale, positioning it perfectly in front of the camera so that it looks like, so it looks like this. It's all lined up, right? Wouldn't it just be much easier to just take a random picture of this guy who's holding his hands up, holding nothing? He's just holding his hands up, and then to have some editor come in, create this border around it. And I feel like that'd be so much easier, right? But anyway, I'm being autistic.
And many of them will emulate his lifestyle. And if he goes to prison in the next year or two for 10 years, then he ends up becoming a martyr and his popularity will grow even further. A month ago, he burned $100 million worth of a daddy crypto token that he had created. And it was kind of wild to watch. The most important thing is that even though he's starting to approach the age of 40, his mind is still as quick as ever. Anyways, that's it for today. Thanks again to John for the donation via Subscribestar, and I hope you enjoyed this topic. Don't forget to smash the like button the way that only stupid men share how they truly feel with the woman they smash. Bang the bell and...
You know what I mean? It's very, it sounds kind of, only dumb men share their feelings. Yeah. It just sounds very, juvenile, right? Am I the only one hearing this? It just sounds kind of like, never express yourself around women. Yeah, don't be mean to you. It just reeks of, incompetence. And what Andrew Tate was saying is, he's saying marriage is a bad idea. That's all he's saying. Right? He's so, I kind of do agree more with Tate where it's you should be able to handle women. This shouldn't be this monumental mistake where it's oh no, all women are evil and we need to, paint them as vile sirens all the time. Really, my framing is, women have negative elements to them, just like everybody does. There's a bad side of female nature. There's a bad side of male nature. And, it's your job to manage it. And if the only way you can manage it is by going MGTOW, you're just such a sucker for boobs that, that the only way for you to retain your dignity and money is to go your own way, then fine. But I would probably prefer, I think the framing that Tate gives it is a better one, which is ascend to a degree of competence where they can't really inflict damage on you And yeah, don't get married unless you're actually gonna take them seriously and you're really gonna like start a family with kids and do it right. But if you just want to fuck around, don't get married. Don't be an idiot, right? Because yeah, Tate definitely is not MGTOW. It's a completely different framing. Tate's perspective is like, yeah, I can handle women. I'm not. Women can be great, when they're in the right element, and when really, if MGTOW should be angry at anything, it should be the way our society is framed, not women specifically. It's not really the fault of women specifically. I mean, like, yeah, you can hold women accountable. Yeah, I do, sure, but it doesn't lead anywhere because they're not going to take accountability. So I can't impose it upon them. I mean, I can shame them, sure. I mean, yeah, I go on Twitter and I can call them non-virgins. It's just not worth my time. You know what I mean? It's like I don't have the time for that. I don't know how anybody does. And they don't consume enough of my mental faculties. That's what I mean. Is most of these red pill MGTOW guys have had like some extremely negative event with a woman in their life that then dominates an element of their psyche, and which is why they have to construe it as like this big evil thing that needs to be attacked and lambasted and disproven and shown as evil, right? Where it's for me, it's more just like, yeah, the red pill is right. MGTOW tends to be more right than wrong, and they're very good at pumping out the necessary messaging about the dangers of female nature. That's good. That's great. Um, but this kind of like fixation and this demonization of women as innately evil, I don't think is true. And the like, just the chronically online like fixation with attacking women. I'm not defending women. I'm just saying like, why do we need to waste all of our time and our happiness uh, attacking random women who aren't they're children. I treat them as children in many ways. Like you can't impose morality or responsibility or accountability onto a child. It's a waste of time. You can try, you can shame the child, but it's also not my job. It's not my job. Like I don't want anything to do with if there's a single mother on the internet who's gonna complain about men not wanting to date her or something, even though she's born again. It's not my job to go tell her why nobody values her and nobody wants to marry her or why she's a whore or whatever, right? It's just not my business. I'm not emotionally invested enough to care, and seeing men who are emotionally invested enough to go continuously continuously um not attack, but sure attack, verbally attack women. um it just I don't know, it just I don't respect that personally. Me personally, I think there's more important things in life than uh, attacking. I don't want to say attacking. It sounds simpy and white knighty. Fuck. What's the word? To insult. No, it's more than insult. It's verbally lambast, I guess, or accuse. Yeah, sure, accuse. Go online accusing women. It's just a waste of time. It's a waste of your time as a man. I do agree with MGTOW in that sense. Like there are more important things to do than attacking women online and complaining about female nature and lamenting it. You got to move on one level, right? That's what I would. It sounds so condescending, doesn't it? It sounds really. I'm trying to say it in a way that someone like Chronic would not get mad at, because I'm trying to frame it without sounding like I'm not defending women. It's more just the idea that like it's not something that you should allow to consume your psyche for you personally. Like fuck random whores, like fuck them. Like why do we care? Like why do you waste time? Haha, single mother. Other than you've had some severe event as a child that affects your psyche and dominates your mind in some way. Um, but anyway, I guess I'll give up. I give up. Like I'm gonna piss people off with these words, so fuck it. Like if you want to get mad, I don't really care. These are my thoughts. These are my opinions. Fuck it. Like if you want to comment negatively or you want to whatever, sure. I mean, I don't care. If you really want to have a debate or an argument, I'm down whenever. I hold no ill will to anyone of opposing views or to anyone listening. So I hope you all found at least something useful. Maybe if it was a little over the top, a little insulting perhaps, or I tend to be pretty. One of my faults as a person is I tend to be not very sensitive to others. So I'm not good at trying. It's a very cognitive thing for me. It doesn't come naturally. I have to think about it. I have to really be careful about not offending people and not saying offensive things and pissing people off. So, anyways, I think we're done with this piece of content for here today, guys. I hope you all found something useful. I hope you all have something to think about. And I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.